Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on adaptive learning in math courses. We're going to give folks a few minutes to come into the webinar room, and then we'll get started. And I'll introduce kind of what we're going to go over today, and our panelists and our moderators. In the meantime, please hang on for 1 minute while we get started. Thanks. Okay, welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Richard Sebastian. I'm the Director of Open and Digital Learning at Achieving the Dream, and I'm really happy to be here for what is our third webinar in this adaptive learning series. This series is sponsored by my organization, Achieving the Dream, as well as the Every Learner Everywhere network, which we'll talk about in a second. While we're getting started, your camera and audio are going to be muted during the webinar since there's so many people today. But if you do have any questions or for the panelists or comments today, please feel free to put them into the chat on the right-hand side. And I would encourage you to select all panelists and attendees if you want it to go to everybody. If you just want to send a message to the panelists, you could do that as well. Also, I just want to let you know that closed captioning is available. So you just have to click on the closed caption icon in your toolbar at the bottom, and you can access that as well as click to open the chat. So a few housekeeping things. And something I would like to ask right off the bat for everyone to do is, if you could, post your name, what institution you're from, and maybe your role at that institution into the chat, so we know who's joining us today, where you're coming from, and everyone else knows as well. So if you could post that in the chat, that'd be really helpful. I want to also say that we are recording today's webinar, so if you have to leave early or if you want to share the recording with colleagues, we will send that out after the webinar is over, along with the slides that we're sharing. We'll take care of that for you. And thank you. I'll see some of the posts coming in. Thanks for sharing that and seeing who's here today. We have approaching 90, maybe 100 folks who are joining us today, so it's really great. So first, let me just tell you who's kind of moderating the session today. I'm joined today by Nate Angel. He is a Every Learner Everywhere coach. He's been helping ATD work with the colleges, the 7 colleges in our ELE Lighthouse institutions and the community colleges there. And so he's going to be moderating today's panel. I'm also joined by Dr. Rwanda Garth McCullough. She is the Associate Director of Teaching and Learning at Achieving the Dream, and she heads up ATD's work with the ELE, or Every Learner Everywhere network. And again, I'm Richard Sebastian, the Director of Open and Digital Learning. Our panelists today are going to be Blerta Hereditario. I did not say that correctly, but I gave it my best. She's a math faculty from Lorain County Community College in Ohio. So she's going to be sharing her experience with adaptive learning in her math courses. Lainey Culligan, she is also math faculty, and she's at the Indian River State College in Florida. And also Nicholas Shore, who's a professor and chair of mathematics at Miami-Dade College, also in Florida. So that's who you're going to hear from today during the webinar. But first, we're going to hear a little bit about the Every Learner Everywhere network project, if you don't know anything about it. And so to do that, I'm going to ask Rwanda Garth McCullough if she could tell us a little bit about the ELE network.
Thank you, Richard. I'm very pleased to be with you today and have this opportunity to share a little bit about the Every Learner Everywhere network that Achieving the Dreams Teaching and Learning team has had the pleasure to work with over the past 2 years. The Every Learner network includes 12 partner organizations funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with the mission to work with colleges to improve student outcomes and address equity gaps for first generation low income students and students of color. Next slide, please, Richard. The network partners are working to support the use of best practices with digital learning technology to improve teaching and learning in the classroom. The first phase of the initiative focused on adaptive learning and supported 12 Lighthouse institutions to integrate adaptive courseware in their gateway courses. Next slide, please. Each of these colleges shared the goal of increasing their student success rates in their courses. An adaptive courseware, if you're not aware, is a digital teaching and learning tool that provides personalized instruction based on a student's response. Next slide, please. The software adjusts the level of difficulty and amount of the questions students complete based on how they respond. At its best, the software operates like personalized learning paths through the content within each course. And on the next slide, you'll see that ATD provides technical assistance to 7 community colleges, and our partner, Association of Public Land Grant Universities, APLU, provides technical assistance for 5 four-year institutions through Every Learner Everywhere. And these institutions are located in Texas, Ohio, and Florida. The next slide gives a preview to our preliminary findings. So we are already seeing the benefits of this work from our pilot and first implementation phases. And we're seeing that 90% of the instructors in the pilot said they believed that adaptive courseware increased student learning. And it was a consistent finding that faculty found that adaptive courseware increased student confidence and engagement in learning. And that came from student focus groups and surveys, as well as faculty interviews and surveys. And the adaptive courseware also increased opportunities for faculty collaboration and course alignment and redesign. And it was found that faculty who used adaptive courseware were more likely to report using evidence-based teaching practices during their terms. And one of the unexpected but really wonderful findings was that during the rapid shift to online instruction, both students and faculty reported less transition issues. They had a more seamless transition to online because they were already using the software, and the students were already in the rhythm of what to expect and how to submit their work and prepare for class. So I will now pass the mic back to Richard.
All right, thank you, Rwanda. And just a note about Achieving the Dream. We're a network of community colleges across the country. We have now about over 270 colleges in our network. And really the focus is to work with colleges to help students, particularly underserved students, realize value, substantial value from their post-secondary experience and their earned credentials, strengthening their communities. So we work with colleges basically to do a kind of holistic institutional transformation around student supports and coaching and whatever other kind of supports colleges may need to help their students be successful. One focus that we have at Achieving the Dream is on teaching and learning. We did just release our teaching and learning toolkit. I'll have a link to that later in today's session. But the ELD work that we do really kind of fits into and learning, in this case around kind of digital learning and adaptive learning tools, specifically around ELE. And we really base our teaching and learning work around what we see as 4 cornerstones of excellence. The first being full-time and adjunct faculty used evidence-based instructional practices to foster student learning. Second is collaborative partnerships that link faculty and student affairs in shared efforts to cultivate and support student success. That educators join their students as active learners in accessible, empowering, personalized, and supportive academic community. And finally, that the institutions embrace professional learning for continuous improvement, realigning their expectations in hiring, evaluation, and promotion. And as you'll see in the toolkit, if you've seen it or if you're going to download a copy of it, the work that you're going to hear about today, the adaptive learning work that these faculty have done in these math courses, it really kind of aligns with really focusing on kind of classroom interactions and engagement, and really kind of personalized engagement in this case for adaptive tools. One more note is that we are part of the Bill and Melinda Gates Solution Networks. ATD is the privilege of being involved in kind of all three of their solution networks. Besides Every Learner Everywhere, we're part of NASPA, which is a Student Affairs Administrators organization or network that's supported by many partners to focus on kind of that area of work in higher ed, as well as Strong Start to Finish. We're part of these network solutions, and Every Learner is just one of those, and we're really grateful and to be part of this work and supporting our colleges in kind of all three areas. So today our focus is on adaptive learning in math courses. The past two webinars we focused, last webinar a few weeks ago was on pedagogy, practice of pedagogy in the classroom. Before that was kind of a broader kind of overview of adaptive learning and adaptive learning courseware. So today's panelists we have three panelists today from different colleges. But first I'm going to introduce my colleague, Nate Angel, who's going to introduce the panelists and then moderate this session. Nate.
Oh, hi, everybody. So greetings today, and I really want to thank Larta, Laney, and Nicholas for joining us today. They're busy educators themselves, and I really appreciate that you were able to take time out of your work to share with these other folks who joined us today. We have over 100 folks here, so it's great. And I just want to start out recognizing that, we're kind of all going through a special time now, especially in education in the middle of this pandemic. And so I want to start out by having each one of you kind of tell us a little bit about how life and your work is going for you now in the context of this pandemic. So I'm going to start out, I'll call on you each in turn so you can kind of give us an understanding of sort of where you are in your institution and what work there is like as an educator. And so I'll start with Blerta.
Hi, everyone. I work at Lorain County Community College. It's been challenging to say the least. We went remote in the middle of March. And at that point, we had spring break plus an additional 2 days to take all of our courses online. And I struggled tremendously at first. I didn't know how I was going to teach. And I was getting a lot of feedback from students saying that I'm working a lot and I'm not going to be able to meet you at the specific time. And so I had to find a way to record a lot of my lectures. So I purchased a new computer, which allowed me to have a stylus to write on the screen. And Canvas for us has Kaltura, which allowed me to record videos. And that made that transition more smooth for me. But it's challenging in trying to reach students. So I sent frequent emails, frequent reminders. I try to promote discussions in Canvas, and we're all trying our best, I suppose. But those are some of the things that I've tried to make this transition smoother.
Yeah, it's interesting that you focus in on technology there a little bit, Blerta. In interviewing some students who've been going through this all with us too, a lot of them kind of came back to the idea that one thing that had happened well in the pandemic for them is they felt like they'd increased their technology skills. So
absolutely, I totally agree. Like, I wish I had known about Kaltura previously, because I utilized discussion forums previous to this pandemic, but I didn't have a way to create like a very brief, like 2-minute explanation. And now I do that all the time. If a student posts a question, especially with statistics, you have to utilize a lot of software to manipulate the data, and being able to show them how to go through those steps, it's amazing. I wish I'd known about it like 10 years ago.
Yeah, so there's a silver lining there, maybe. And how about you, Lainey? The same question to you. How has life and work been going for you in the context of the epidemic?
Well, hello again, everyone. So I'm Lainey Culligan from Indian River State College. During this pandemic, it has been difficult. I think more so than ever, just because of the fast-paced nature of it being, so abrupt. But thankfully, I think here at IRSC, we've been, the whole society is kind of going more online. So I think we've kind of been transitioning. So for example, I've been trying to implement flip model of where they watch the lectures at home at their own pace on YouTube. So that way they can do it on their own device. And then they come in class where we have peer tutors and they can do the actual work in class with us here to support them and for us to help them. So that I felt like gave me a huge jump because a lot of my lectures were already recorded online. And I was kind of used to that whole recording lecture things, but likewise, I also had to get new technology. I had to get a new iPad so that way I had the right stylus that worked just to kind of make everything easier. And it was hard because I felt like everyone was getting new stuff. So it was hard for our students and for us as well. But I feel like as educators, that is what we're good at. We're good at, being thrown curveballs and just dealing with it like, on the spot. So as a whole, as educators, I felt like given the crazy condition, the crazy challenge, we took it on, full force and really took advantage. And like we said, there's some silver linings. Yes, it was difficult. And I feel like I'm still recovering, I guess, from the trauma, but it's definitely some silver linings in that, yes, there's great technology that we now have available. I really feel like it enhanced our courses for the future for students that have whether they're out because they're sick or whether they're out because of some, they're on vacation, who knows why they're out, if they just, miss a day or just want to go back and rewatch a video, for example, they have that option. So I think it definitely enhanced, I know for me, my courses and my teaching, and hopefully enhance the students' learning. They also, communication was a big thing. Thinking through this answer, communication came up because I felt like in the past, communication with my students on their end relied solely on talking to me in person. And for me, I spent many hours sending out emails with no responses, and communicating was a hard part. But I feel like now that we're kind of all in the online, so I do online and hybrid courses where we do meet partially face-to-face. So I still have a little bit of an interaction, which I'm very thankful for in a math class setting. But being online has really helped me and helped them to communicate online, and I feel like I'm just communicating with them better and they're communicating with me what their needs are, how I can help them. So I feel like there's definitely some silver linings amongst all of this madness.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I really pulled out of what you were saying there is like, I think we need to be patient with ourselves and with our students both, because, we're all dealing with like a whole variety of new situations, not from the technology to, the economy to social parts, it's all different. And so, giving ourselves that space and them, I think is important. So I also want to give Nicholas a chance to talk about how life has been and has been for him during in the pandemic.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Nicholas Scher from Miami-Dade College. In terms of life in the pandemic, really what it's done is it's accelerated our aspirational plans. About 5 years ago, when I started becoming the department chair for the department, one of our aspiration plan was to increase our technology use. And I heard Lainey and Loretta mention the fact that they actually went out and bought some computers with stylus. So we started that 5 years ago to make sure that every single one of our faculty members had this technology in their hands. The reason is because we wanted student access. We wanted to make sure that when a professor goes in the classroom, it's just not a whiteboard, that they can actually use something like OneNote or Word or Microsoft Journal or whatever software they prefer, and actually record the lecture. So in case a student missed a class or they needed a note taker, that we had a way to get that information to the students. In terms of the software, really what it did, it forced us to really create course templates for all of our courses, but more than just the course template is adding those additional resources. So which videos are going to work for the courses. Are we going to use an adaptive piece, since we are talking about the adaptive learning approach here? So this became a big challenge, and really what combining this project with COVID-19, really it's forcing my department to shift into starting to think that all of our courses need some aspect of the adaptive in it. How much, I don't know. So in the spring, we're going to first do our first huge set of courses, and we're going to move on over to Alex 360, which is a combination of adaptive and static homework platform. So all in all, I can say it's been pretty good. The biggest challenge has been training every single adjunct to be able to use this technology. I think that's probably been the biggest challenge.
Yeah, we're all in the middle of increasing our technology skills, right? Well, let's actually turn now to our main focus now on the adaptive learning. And just to set things up, I want to just describe a little bit of the data behind each college and what they did with adaptive in the context of this program with Every Learner Everywhere and Achieving the Dream. And so at Indian River Laney's College, they started in last fall and were focused on math courses, and you can see they were a couple different courses there with 235 students, and then they've been continuing that in the summer. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Lainey, you have adaptive classes running this fall as well.
That is correct. Yes, we've actually even implemented it now into college algebra, so that way we're taking it on to the next course level. Right.
Yeah. So it seems like at most schools that have started down this path, they've just increased their usage of adaptive. And then for the next slide, at Lorraine, which is Blerta's school, you can see a little bit smaller cohort in last fall. Again, doing some math, but also some business administration. And then again, they've continued that in the summer. And Blerta, your school is also continuing with adaptive, is that right?
Yes, we currently are continuing as well this semester as well. Yes.
And is that in math and business administration?
Yes, I believe so. I know for sure for math, and I believe yes for business administration as well, but I'm not 100% certain on that part.
Got it. And then finally at Miami-Dade, Nicholas's college, you can see they were a little bit larger. They had more folks starting out in the fall, and with just the primary focus on math, which is Nicholas's department. And has it continued to expand this fall there at Miami-Dade, Nicholas?
Yeah, we continue to expand this fall. And this fall, fall 2020, we approximately have, I'm just looking at the data, 600 students enrolled in a class that is going to be offering an adaptive platform for college algebra. And we continue to improve, and we're adapting that to our integrated college algebra, which is pre-calculus and college algebra combined for the spring.
That's great. Well, and so I know one thing that everybody has sort of asked for in the webinars that we've had is it's sometimes hard to really grasp what this adaptive experience is like for both the teachers and the students. And so I've asked each one of our panelists today to just give us a little short look into what things were actually like in the context of an actual class they taught. So I want to start out with Blerta. And so if we can quickly shift who's sharing their screen here from Richard to Blerta, give us a second to get that going. And then I'm going to ask Blerta to just quickly walk us through a scenario of the class that she was involved with. And they will talk about the products that they were using. Robin, I see your question there in the chat as we go along. So I'm going to step out of the way here and let Blerta, we see your screen. You want to just go into present? Yep, there we go. Perfect. Okay, we got our technology skills are aces now. Okay, I'll let you go away with the Blerta.
Thank you. So as I previously said, my name is Blerta Hereditario, and I am going to discuss today some of the lessons that we've learned from utilizing adaptive courseware here at Lorain County Community College. And this college is located slightly outside of Cleveland, Ohio. So the course where we decided to implement the adaptive courseware was our introductory non-calculus based statistics course. The course discusses some data collection, data description, basic probability, sampling distributions, probability distributions, and confidence intervals, and hypothesis testing. I actually, I don't know if I should say this, but it's my favorite course to teach because it's as real life as it can possibly get. We place an emphasis on using technology to solve problems that involve real life data. And just recently, when remdesivir came about and Dr. Fauci mentioned the p-value, I talked about it to my students because that's exactly what we were discussing at that point. And it was like this amazing thing, like statistics in real life. Just for perspective, in fall 2019, we had 798 students enrolled in the course, but fall 2019 was also the first semester for which we started implementing co-requisite courses, Math 068 specifically. And so 238 of the students of the 798 students enrolled were concurrently enrolled in both courses. So the textbook that we utilize in the course is Statistics Unlocking the Power of Data, the second edition by the Locke family. And the textbook comes along with Wiley Plus, which is the online homework system that we utilize. My colleague, who is the coordinator of the course, found out that there is adaptive courseware that goes along with it, which comes at no extra cost for the students. And the adaptive courseware has 5 chapter quizzes that we implement at the very end of each chapter. And so the students have to participate and have to complete 5 chapter quizzes. And this accounts for 14% of their final grade at the end of the semester. So just so that you can see the student view, here, step 1, the student would have to select a chapter, and then they would rate their confidence level. And then in step 3, they would complete the 20-question diagnostic test. So at this point, Wiley Plus is going to understand where does the student stand with regards to his or her learning. Then at this point, the student has a chance to review the reports and to determine what to study and to practice. In the next step, in order to be able to receive a grade for completing the chapter adaptive practice quiz, the student then is going to have to complete 20 additional questions. These questions are specifically tailored to that particular student, and they are based on how they responded to that first set of 20 questions. Now, I will say they're not easy questions. They're challenging. They're going to push the student. And as a result, when we decided on the grade threshold, we said we have to account for this challenge. And so you can see here that we decided that if a student completes, has a performance of between 69 to 100%, they're going to receive 100 out of 100 for that particular chapter adaptive quiz. Now, the student at this point, if they're not happy with their grade that they have received, they have the chance to continue to complete more questions. There are like 400 questions for each chapter quiz here that can go through and they can complete. And frequently I do have students that go through and complete more questions. And I've heard that they really enjoy and that fact that they can go through and complete more questions. And so they're more comfortable by the time the exam time comes around. Now, there is a caveat with it that if they do poorly on extra questions, that their grade will drop. And so they have to be aware of that. Now, how does it look from the instructor view? And so you can see here that the performance reports are broken down by chapter, by question, and by learning objective. And so as the instructor, you have the opportunity to go through and look at a particular, for example, learning objective that your students haven't performed well. And then you have the chance to say, hey, let's discuss this particular topic one more time to ensure that we're all on the same page. You can also, as a instructor, look to see how much, for example, a student has spent, how much time that a particular student has spent, and also how many questions the student has completed. Frequently, especially for the first few chapter quizzes, I will have students emailing me and saying, well, I don't know why I didn't get a grade for this particular chapter practice quiz. I did all my work. And then I will log in here and I will see that students have completed 39 questions, for example. And so I'll say to them, well, let me give you a chance to complete that one extra problem that you didn't so that you can so you can receive a grade. But with COVID, even before COVID, after the due date, I do go in and check, hey, did everyone complete it? And I do send an individual email to each student saying, hey, I noticed you didn't complete this. Let me know if you need me to extend the deadline. I think we all have learned to be a little bit more, what's the word I want to use here? I can't think of one.
Empathetic or?
Yeah, absolutely. We there's just a lot of challenge happening in all of our lives, and so we need to be a little bit more adjustable to that challenge. So
That's really great, Dr. Thank you. So I think that gave us a little bit of some good insight into what the basic adaptive experience is like, both for students and teachers. And remember back when Rwanda kind of had that slide up of the different pathways that folks take, and I think Blarta did a good job of kind of exposing us to how that happens. So I really appreciate that. And just so we're going to start off now with getting an introduction from each one of our panelists, sort of like Berta did about the context of a particular course. And so as we go through this, you may have questions. Feel free to put them in chat in the Q&A and might be answered in the context of the conversation, or we might get to them separately. So now I'm going to turn to Lainey. And for that, we're going to need to bring back up the slides there, which was on it. And ask Lainey to kind of walk us through your class, and make sure to mention both like any books and materials and products that you were using, if you could, Lainey.
All right, perfect. Yes. So we implemented this at IRSC. First of all, I want to say our math department is wonderful for being collaborative, and that we meet on a monthly basis. We also had an adaptive committee. So we kind of really came in between the department as a whole, and then our subcommittees for each course that we're teaching, as well as subcommittees in that, and how we're using an adaptive feature. So it's awesome to have the collaboration and support of the department behind us. So we started off by adapting it in our MAT 1100, which is quantitative reasoning course. That is our introductory math course for our non-STEM majors, as well as our intermediate algebra course. So it's the same level, just whether they're STEM versus non-STEM pathways. And that's where we kind of started everything. From there, it's, as I said earlier, it branched off to business cal this semester, as well as college algebra. But this was kind of like where we started everything. So this is a screenshot of a sample pie. And by pie, we're using the quantitative reasoning courses, that first course I'm talking about, which is the non-STEM pathway. And we use Alex for that class. So it's a collaborative based course, so where we do a little bit of lecture from the beginning. Then they work collaboratively in groups for most of the time. And then we also incorporated this adaptive feature. So before adaptive, we've used Alex, and we're continuing to use Alex for this course. And then because we've already kind of used to it, and we really had that confidence, that way we could take it. Because whenever you talk about adaptive, our first conversation was a little overwhelming, because there were so many products out there and so much things to look at, and it was just a lot, and we didn't know what was going to fit our needs best. So we decided, instead of spending our time kind of in all different little pieces, let's just hone in on what we're already using, what we're already comfortable with what our students are already comfortable with, and then kind of taking that and tailoring it to our needs. So that is why we chose to use Alex for this course, and it's been great. So in that, before our adaptive features, we had static homework and quizzes. So typical old school, it is virtual. So it is on the Alex online platform, but it's static homework and quizzes, meaning every single student has the same exact homework questions, the same exact quiz questions. It might just differ by the numbers that are in their problems, which, like I said, was very traditional. At first, it seemed like the easier option, but then now that we got used to what we're doing now, this is actually, it doesn't take any more time or anything like that. Speaking of being overwhelming, I think that was my biggest fear, I guess, coming into this. It was so overwhelming, and I was scared of not only choosing it, but implementing it, and everything like that was very overwhelming. But now that we do it, the forefront was work. But now that we have it implemented, I think it was 100% worth that that forefront effort that we put in, like I said, collaboratively as a department. So going back to how we use Alex, we are, the students start off coming in the first day. If you just go back to that one screen real quick. Yes, I'm sorry. I will try to speed up, but there's just so many good things to talk about. So the students come in.
I'm not rushing you. I'm sorry. I'm just.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. So our students come in the first day of class and we kind of talk about what this is. A lot of these students, this is their first semester in class for this population of this course. So they come in, you know, deer in the headlights looking, they're overwhelmed at first. So we kind of talk to them and introduce them to how the class is going to be. It's not a traditional class because we use the collaborative features as well as the adaptive features. We kind of explain everything and get them, you know, logged in. Everything's great. Usually about the second day of class, we do an in-class knowledge check, an in-class diagnostic. It's just a participation grade. It doesn't affect their grade, but it does create this pie. So we found that doing it in class, they take it more seriously. I know there was a question on the chat about, do they just, you know, go through it? We explained to them that this is what creates their pie. So, and this is a picture of a student. Actually, it was one of the other professors that they did it as a student view. So they took the diagnostic and that way, this is what you get out of it. So you don't get a score out of it, you get this pie. So it creates an individual pie for each student, based off of their scores on this knowledge check. So it's saying, you know, these are the different features that, the different skills that you are good on. This is the skills that you're weak on. And we try to explain to them, growth mindset is a huge thing for me and for our department of this should not be full. So make sure they realize that this should not be a complete thing. So the whole point in this course is to grow our skills and to expand and to improve our pie. So they get to this this screen, and then from there at the bottom, there was a tab, and it might have got cut off, but it's okay. But it says continue my pathway. So this creates a pathway for them. All the students have to do is click on continue my pathway, and it creates that pathway for the student that is completely individualized based off of their skills on a knowledge check, and also, which I really like, on how well they're retaining the material. So they go through, and depending on what questions they get right or wrong, it kind of alters their pathway, focusing and honing in on the skills that they are showing that they're weak on. And then another, like I said, feature I really like is it kind of goes back and checks those other skills for how well they're retaining the information. And it really shows them that it links the skills together. And this is what took the place of the static homework. So now this is their homework grade. And then they also have the static quizzes still. So that way they have some consistent method of, you know, because the test is going to be static, obviously a test using the same Alex platform, but it's going to be a static test where everyone has the same questions, you know, different numbers, so to speak. So I want them to get used to that and practice that for the test, yet these skills are being built on to get to that level. So if you can go to the next slide now, please. Perfect. So this is what it looks like kind of on our end. So each little section of our pie, so to speak, has different objectives. So I was really concerned whenever we first started this about everyone's going to be coming in here so different. Everyone comes in, especially we've had new legislation that's passed through that's letting students come right into these classes and not take, you know, the previous developmental classes. So we've seen a really big increase in the skill level coming in. So we really wanted to narrow that gap, narrow the equity gap, and kind of get everyone on the same page, especially when they leave here. So I was very frightened in the sense that everyone's going to be different. But I wanted to show you this screen to show you that it's not. We're all on the same page and it correlates exactly with what we go on with the class. So for example, the first week, if we do 1.1 and 1.2, they have those objectives and that deadline, that specific deadline that it meets. So that way we're all on the same page, even though the questions are different and adaptive and individualized for the student, it's all on the same topic. It is, because it's adaptive, where some students, they might already be strong in that skill and it takes them, you know, 15 minutes, where some students, it might take them an hour or two, and that's fine. I really want to stress the idea again of a growth mindset and working towards a goal and really working on your weak skills and individualizing the homework to work on the students' weak skills and kind of make it more like spend their time more productively. Like I don't want to spend, doing 5 problems that I already know. I'd rather spend the time more productively and work on only the weak skills. And then it still has that retention feature of it going back and addressing previous skills. So this is our way of having due dates that kind of keep students in check. With that being said, even though they hit the due date, the student has the opportunity to continue because they still need those skills. Obviously, math, we need those foundational skills to move on. So they still have the opportunity to do those. And then at the end, we have our individual objective, which are these lists right here, the objectives for each lesson, grade. And then we also have an overall PI completion grade. So if students get behind, if they miss something, everything happens with students, especially during this crazy time. They want to continue to complete their PI, not only because we need to complete those skills to move on and build on those skills for our next skills that we're working on, but we also want to work on it for your PI completion grade. So that's kind of a way of addressing that. So usually in class, what we kind of do so that we kind of see what it looks like in class is we spend the first 10-15 minutes kind of bringing everyone together, having a whole class discussion on the topic, kind of making sure we're all starting off on somewhat on the same page. Then they break and do collaborative learning in their groups for the next 20 minutes or so. And then they finish off by working on their PI a little bit in class. And that's really shown whether it's in class virtually or whether it's in class face-to-face. That's really shown to kind of bring us together. We've also used in-class peer tutors, which has been huge. So that way if a student is on their PI, they're working on their weak skills. So a lot of times they need help. So we have the professors walking around, asking questions. It's very active for the professors and for the students and for the tutors that are also walking around answering questions, but we're all really active in the learning process. So it's kind of been more engaging, I would say, for the students and for myself, that we are all really active in the learning process. I'm trying to think if I missed anything before going on to the next course. And then throughout the course, there is checkpoints where they redo the knowledge check and then kind of make sure that we're all, it's very, like they go back and try to make sure that we're all on the same page and it's very updated. So that way they retest themselves saying they just had a bad day. They have the opportunity to improve that grade and improve their PI. So very adaptive, very helpful, very useful. So that is our non-STEM pathway course. Moving on, this is our next course. This is actually a screenshot from My Lab Math. So we use Pearson products for our STEM courses, intermediate and college algebra. And in doing so, again, we were overwhelmed and we wanted to use the skills that we had. You're good to go to the next assignment list, to the last picture. Yes, perfect, thank you. So we used My Lab Math Pearson products previously. And so we wanted to continue using that for this course and just use the features within it to make it adaptive. So it's a little bit different, but it still has that individualized adaptive tools in it. So it's kind of cool how we still use the platforms we were comfortable with and our students were comfortable with, and we just adapted it to our adaptive features. So started off again, taking a diagnostic test. We try to make this proctored. I know with this time it's hard, whether we proctor it face-to-face in our hybrid classes, whether it's through Zoom or Blackboard Collaborate, we use Blackboard. There's kind of some different options that we have there. Again, we as educators are known to be very flexible and kind of deal with whatever's thrown at us. So we've done that. We've kind of dealt with it. So we try to take the diagnostic test in a proctored setting, so that way they take it more serious. Because a lot of times I know, even for me as a student, I'd see a diagnostic test and they just said, take it, it's participation grade. And I'd be like, okay, let me just take it. But in a diagnostic, in a proctored setting, the diagnostic I think has more value. And again, we try to explain to the students the reason behind our madness. We try to explain to them, this is why we're doing it. This is the purpose. This is how it's going to help you in your learning process. Again, fostering that growth mindset and making them accountable for their own learning. So they take the diagnostic test, and then it's kind of like Alex, they create a pie. This creates a post-diagnostic homework. So the post-diagnostic homework hones in on the students' skills that they've shown that they were weak in. So whatever skills they mastered, shown on the diagnostic test, it goes ahead and marks those correct. And that way their post-diagnostic homework is something that they do as a homework assignment at home, so that way they can really hone in and work on those weak skills that they've shown from the diagnostic test. So it's adaptive. Again, we have peer tutors in here as well. We have ASC labs, everything like that. On My Lab Math, there are videos that we can help them with. There are videos. There are the built-in Pearson videos. There's a lot of resources to help them with these skills that they've shown that they're weak on. And it's kind of the opposite. So in the quantitative reasoning course, their homework is adaptive and their quizzes are static. So meaning their homework is adaptive to their skills that they need, and it's individualized for every student, and the quizzes are static. Here it's backwards. So our homeworks are static. So that way they get a chance to practice the different homework assignments, just like normal. It's the same for everyone, just different numbers. And then once they've spent the time practicing, then we want to get to the test. I found in my experience teaching math thus far that a lot of students don't know how to study, especially in these first-time college students, whether it is their first semester, they don't know how to study for math. So I really want to help them learn how to study for math and learn how to study for their future benefits or future classes, whether it's math or any other subject. So what we created was an adaptive quiz. So they start off by taking the pre-quiz, and it's in order. So they just work their way down the list. It's very intuitive. It's very easy to use. All they do is work their way down the list and they're good to go. So they start off with that chapter 1 pre-quiz. They take it as it's a test-like setting. So even though they take it at home, I tell them, pretend this is the test. You've spent the time practicing, pretend it's a test, and see how well you do on it. So based off of what they get on the pre-quiz, then they have the adaptive feature, which is the actual quiz. So just like the diagnostic, it shows whatever they got right on the pre-quiz. It automatically marks it right on the quiz. Then they're left with this questions that they didn't know. They didn't prove that they mastered them yet. So it's really adaptive in the sense that here's everything you need to work on and you need to study personally. So it really helps them do that. So that's how the quiz works.
Hey, Lainey, I just wanted to interrupt for a second. We're running a little short on time, actually, and I really appreciate the detailed walkthrough, but I'm wondering, I want to leave some time for Nicholas and some conversation too. So I'm wondering if I could kind of bring it to a close here. We understand, that there's probably a lot more detail in this course.
Yes, no, that's fine. Yeah, so that's pretty much it anyway. So we're good. So that's, they take the quiz, and then they should be ready to go. So that's how we use it. And there we go. Perfect.
I know I remember from talking with you before, you're so excited and enthusiastic about what goes on. You just love to talk about it. That's great. So I wanted to take this opportunity. We see your questions coming through, and we'll be working to address them in the rest of the conversation. But I wanted to give Nicholas a chance to kind of just give us a bird's eye view of a course there at Miami-Dade.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. Basically, the way we view as adaptive learning or artificial intelligence is a way that's supposed to make our lives easier, because we really were using this as a platform for our adjuncts. So we wanted to make sure that when we incorporated this adaptive learning, that it's almost the professor didn't even know it was there. So what we did is we created the My Math Lab with the integrated review and also skill builder. It's very similar to what Lainey was describing. We basically had 7 checkpoints, but we used it to make sure that the students had the prerequisite knowledge in order to understand the college algebra material. So before they can actually do the homework, they had to go ahead and do the adaptive piece, which makes sure that they have the skill set to be able to do the actual college algebra material. And then they can actually go ahead and actually do their static homework. So it's a hybrid. It's a combination of your dynamic assignments and your static assignments. In addition, we wanted to make sure that what happens in the classroom matches the adaptive learning platform. So we've also created interactive lecture notes that actually mimic the program itself, right? So the professors would have to ask questions that would engage the students and try to really go understand what the students don't understand. And then that way, when they go and do the homework, they can actually practice that. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, great. And I really appreciate, I feel like the three of you were able to give people kind of a much richer context around, what it's actually like to experience these adaptive courses, both from the student and the teacher perspective. And obviously it's different depending on the kind of software you use. And I would like to point out that in the interviews that we did with students, a lot of them really appreciated the fact that the adaptive platforms were giving them data back on their progress and their pathway. And I think that pie that Lainey was showing from Alex is an especially rich example of that. I had a lot of students talk about how they just intuitively understood where they were because of that visualization of the pie. And then as they completed it, I mean, when they talked about completing it, the sense of victory in their voices was remarkable. So, a couple of questions have come up while you all have been presenting. And one of them is, I just want to address head on, is about the cost. So, obviously the adaptive may not be the only piece of course materials that is being used. It may be part of a book as well, or there may be an additional book or other online software. And so I'm wondering, Blarta, in your context, do you know what the kind of relative costs of having the adaptive element in the coursework compared to maybe what they were without it?
So at our school, the adaptive courseware is no extra cost for students. So we have actually implemented inclusive access to students for the textbook and the Wiley Plus. And right now, as soon as a student signs into the course in Canvas and they complete their first assignment, they have access to the material right away. And so the only thing that they get charged with their student fees is for the textbook and the Wiley Plus access. And because we did the inclusive access, students are actually getting a lower price. So I really like the fact that the adaptive courseware is no extra charge for students. So I think I responded to someone on the question and answer part. I would encourage you to talk to your publisher if you do have a publisher, because sometimes you might not be aware of material that they have available, which was the case with us. My colleague, like I said, was the one that discussed the potential of this, and it's kind of working out really well.
Great. And Nicholas, at Miami-Dade, what about, I mean, you're looking across a couple different courses there, but can you speak to the costs?
Yeah, we can speak of the costs. I mean, the two platforms that we used in this experiment were Newton and Pearson. Both were pretty cost saving. I mean, in terms of Pearson was $70 on the student cost, and in terms of Newton it was $35.
And was that in addition to other costs, or?
So that's not an addition. Basically, this included the textbook, well, a virtual copy of the textbook and the online homework platform and adaptive learning piece. Alex 360, which is one that we're moving into, probably would be one of the most expensive platforms. I think it's about $120 per student, but once again, it includes everything. So still about half the cost of the traditional textbook for the course.
And some of those platforms, I think, they can use them for more than one class. Is that right?
Yeah. So, I mean, our calculus series, or even some of our algebra sequence, they can go college algebra, pre-calculus, trigonometry, and that's all the same book, or Cal 1's Cal 1, Cal 2, Cal 3. Our liberal arts is liberal arts 1, liberal arts 2. So yeah, I mean, they're definitely getting cost savings because they can use it over expand of X amount of years.
That makes sense. And Lainey at Indian River, did you have an idea of what the relative costs were?
Yeah, so we use the same the adaptive features were just built into our learning platform. So it was the same, whether it was adaptive or non-adaptive course. So it was pretty similar to what Nicholas was saying with the cost wise. It was all they have to do is buy the one-time access code. That includes their book, that includes all the learning platforms, their homework quizzes, everything's all in one-stop shop.
Got it. That makes sense. And I mean, another kind of general topic has come up here that I think maybe we could, we might have to close on this actually, given the timing here. But a couple of you have had experience with a couple different platforms now, and I think Rhonda might even want to weigh in on this. But I'll start with Berta. Do you feel like, in your experience, that there's been any sort of like, crystallization around what adaptive really means, or is it still kind of a practice that's experimental and there are many different flavors of it? I don't know if you feel like you have enough experience with different platforms to even address that.
I do not. This is the only platform that I have utilized. So I'm not sure that I would be the best person to answer that question. It was challenging at first to answer questions from students, because I kept looking around like, how do I answer this question? I don't know what they're referring to. So I would strongly encourage each of you, if you do plan on utilizing whichever platform you utilize, I would encourage you to take the test yourself. In fact, that's what we did at our school at first. And even though, we're highly educated people, we got tricked by some of these questions. By reading it, we would get the answer wrong. And so based on that, it made the decision on what should our grade threshold be. So whatever platform you decide to go with, I encourage you to look at it from the student perspective first, so that you're aware what kind of questions to anticipate.
And Nicholas, what about you? Have you had experience with different platforms?
So yeah, I mean, I've had experience almost with all the platforms. Alex 360 is the newest one out right now. Wiley, I've used Wiley Plus. I've used WebAssign, built assignments in Blackboard. My Math Lab is probably one of the more popular ones out there right now. So really, I use all the platforms, and the way that it's set up at our college, it really depends upon how the department votes. So the department votes on the particular textbook. Textbooks come with each with their own platform. Based upon that platform, we'll go ahead and deliver the product that we think. So that's why we came up with these interactive lecture notes to ensure that we were all on the same page on what we're going to teach. And there were some questions about it. I'll just do a quick little chat about it, if you don't mind, Nate.
Sure. Yeah, if you can do it in less than a minute. So we're running out of time.
I was about to say 30 seconds.
Okay.
Basically, those interactive lecture notes are just basically, they tell the professor key points where to give exercises and questions so the students can discover concepts in mathematics, or the professor can ensure that the students are actually learning the material correctly, actually by seeing how their students are performing.
Great, that makes sense. And I'm sorry to have to wrap up here, because I feel like we just got started, but we're actually at the end of our time here together. So I really appreciate what you've all brought and all the questions that everybody has asked. I'll just mention to Michael asked a question about data and analysis around comparing student performance and student success in these different contexts. And that's a whole big topic. And I'm sure that ATD can provide some further context around that. There's been a couple of other opportunities to learn more about the data outcomes from this experiment across all the different colleges, both 2-year and 4-year. So with that, I'm gonna actually need to hand it back to Richard Sebastian at ATD so he can bring us to a close. But before we go, a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you folks. I really appreciate your being here.
Thanks, Nate. Yeah, and once again, thanks to our panelists today. Really appreciate you being here. Thanks to Rwanda as well for leading this program and being here today. A few things before we go. I know we're getting very close, a couple minutes left, but I wanted to share a link once more, and hopefully Nate can put it into the chat, of our teaching and learning toolkit. It's free, and it's a really valuable resource that just came out just a few weeks ago. So I really encourage you to check it out. There's, it's a got lots of useful worksheets around those cornerstones I talked about, and kind of activities and ways you can kind of move through it and really kind of focus on teaching and learning at your institution. Certainly take advantage of that. Also, really quickly, our next and final webinar, sadly, in this series is going to be on November 18th. So it's similar today, except we're talking about science courses. So we're going to be focused on the adaptive learning and adaptive learning courseware used in science courses at our colleges. We're going to feature a couple of community colleges as well as a 4-year college that's part of Every Learner Everywhere, that's led by APLU. I also wanted to share the links to the Every Learner Everywhere website if you want to find out more about this network and this program. And there's also a related site called Solve, and this is where the assets, the kind of a lot of the products that have come out of the Every Learner Everywhere project live. And so there are lots of different things that you can take advantage of around adaptive learning, learn more about kind of the work of the colleges in this network. So certainly check those sites out if you want to find out more. And finally, we want to hear what you think about this webinar today and any other ones that you've attended. So Nate's going to post the link to just a really brief survey. If you could take a moment and just let us know what you thought about today, how useful it was, any suggestions that you have. That would be really helpful to us. Really appreciate it, and it shouldn't take long. Once again, thanks to everybody today for being here. Thank you for taking your time out and joining us. Hopefully we'll see you on the 18th. And again, we will send out the slides and the webinar recording to everyone who registered for this. You're welcome to share that with your colleagues, anyone who may have missed this today. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks again, and have a great rest of your day and rest of your week. Take care.